In this video, I'm going to be talking about, I guess, like a more serious topic, but I don't want this to be like one of those videos where I'm like getting really serious, because like, I don't know. There are so many videos on YouTube that talk about like depression and anxiety and stuff like that, and all of those videos have helped me so much. So I kind of want to contribute to that, I guess, resource inside of YouTube, and I want to share it with other people so I can try to help others that are going through it, because it freaking sucks. Right at the end of 5th grade, I did notice that my parents weren't really talking as much. And growing up, I knew that there was tension in their relationship, but I didn't think they were gonna separate and get divorced until I was in high school. I always knew my parents were going to get divorced. I knew they weren't really happy. I knew they were kind of just putting on a front for everyone else to see. And I thought they were just gonna stay together because of me. It's a lot easier to break up with someone when you're just dating them and you don't have like this whole life. They had a house, they had a family, they had jobs, they had like careers, they had a child, me, together. There was a lot of stuff kind of tying them together. And the whole process of them breaking that apart was really difficult, especially on me, because I was in the middle of all of this and it was out of my control. When I was in kindergarten, I moved from the city where I'm living now to Texas. Whenever I lived here, I was really close to my dad. We would listen to music in the car all the time and go places and have so much fun. And my mom was going back to school, so she was in college and she was trying to get a degree and all of that. She was juggling a lot. My earliest memories are of spending time with my dad and getting close to my dad. But once we moved to Texas, it kind of switched, and it was my dad kind of just sat back and didn't really do anything as far as parenting goes. So we lived in an apartment in Texas with me, my mom and dad, my grandparents, and my uncle, because my grandparents didn't really have a lot of money. My grandma had breast cancer, a brain tumor, and I think something with her thyroid, but I'm not quite sure what that was. They were originally from Mexico, but they came here when my parents got married and they got citizenship, and they didn't really have a lot of money because, you know, my grandma didn't really know any English and she was sick. My grandpa was the one who was working and my uncle was the one who was working, and we were all trying to support them while they were going through a hard time, because that's what you do when your family is struggling. You support them. So in 3rd grade, we moved into a house, finally. I was so excited because I lived in apartments my entire life, and now I was finally gonna live in a house. My grandparents moved with us, and so did my uncle. So we were all living together in this tiny 3-bedroom house, which normally a 3-bedroom house would be pretty big, but because of the amount of people who were living there, it kind of got chaotic. My grandparents would try to parent me, and there was a lot of drama. They hated my dad, so they were really nasty and mean to him. So there was a lot of tension, and that really started to affect their relationship. Of course, I was young and I was kind of naive, and I didn't really fully understand what was going on. I call this section of the story the last summer where everything was kind of okay. My dad was working from home, and over the summer, you know, I would just hang out in my room and I would watch YouTube on my iPad. That's whenever I started getting into YouTube, and I just remember being really happy and comfortable with who I was. I was fine with staying home all day and being on my iPad, and I was fine with just kind of just chilling all day and not really having any priorities or summer homework like I do now, and everything just felt really relaxed and I was just really happy. Then out of nowhere, August hit. I was about to start middle school, and it was probably the hardest transitional phase in my entire life, because, you know, I was going from elementary school, you know, really simple, young-minded stuff, to heavy middle school depression, anxiety, and all of that. I was in the car one day. My mom was the leader of my Girl Scout troop, and I asked her what we were going to do on the meeting the following day, and then she said that she wasn't really sure and she was thinking about canceling the meeting, and I was really confused, and I was like, why? Like, what happened? And she said, your father and I need to talk to you about something. And I looked at her, and I could just tell from her expression what she was gonna tell me. I just lost it, and I started crying and sobbing, because everything I knew about my life and everything I knew about my family was completely falling apart. And I didn't know how to deal with that because until this point, the only adversity I had faced was being bullied. But even that wasn't nearly as bad as the pain that I felt at this point in my life. My dad moved out in September. It felt so empty and weird without him. This was the person that I had grown up with. My pain and frustration kind of manifested in anger and hatred toward my dad. I said a lot of nasty and mean things to him. I didn't understand how you could just leave your own family when you had spent all of those years building it together with somebody, and then you just leave your own daughter. I mean, obviously you can tell I still have a lot of strong emotions about this. I haven't really thought about this in a while. Divorce sucks. It sucks for the couple that has to completely start over. It sucks for their family. It sucks for their kids. It sucks for everyone. And it's something I hope I never have to experience. I hope I never have to get divorced. I hope that if I get married in the future, I'm happy and it goes well. The hardest part of all this was seeing my mom cry and seeing her wake up on some days with really puffy eyes where I knew she had been crying herself to sleep. I knew how lonely she was. And nothing is more devastating than seeing your own mom cry. Your mom, who you're taught to look up to for your whole life, crying and showing a form of weakness. I wasn't wanting this video to be so sad, but now it is, and that wasn't my intention at all. The next few months were kind of blurry because not really that much happened. And this was quite a few years ago, and a lot of it was so horrible, and all the stuff I was feeling, it was just so terrible that my mind, I feel like I just kind of blocked out a lot of stuff, and there are a lot of things I don't fully remember. Thanksgiving of that year was probably the worst day of my life, and I don't want to get into complete specifics because it's really hard to talk about, but there was a lot of family drama that went on with my mom and my grandparents. They said a lot of horrible stuff, and after that our family wasn't really the same because once my dad moved out, it was my grandparents and my uncle and I were all living in the same house, and there was a lot of tension, and my grandpa kind of felt the need to be the man of the house and boss everyone around, and my mom didn't like that. I overheard, and this was the day I probably had my first panic attack, my first bad panic attack. I remember sitting in my mom's room crying and hyperventilating and sobbing, and I was doing that for this entire week, just crying and sobbing and hyperventilating and feeling so many emotions at once, yet nothing all at the same time, and it was such a hard thing to deal with. And some of the thoughts I had were really dark and they were really sad. And I kind of just lost hope altogether because I felt like I didn't really have anything to live for. I'm just gonna be flat out and say I almost killed myself that day, and I'm so glad I didn't because so many great things have happened since then. And to any of you who are having thoughts like that right now, I just want to remind you that you can't give up, because if you give up, you're taking away your opportunity for life to get better. I'm glad I didn't take away my opportunity because life has gotten a lot better since then, and I'm so much better than I was back then. Moving on from that, it was just really weird because I was living in this house with my grandparents and my family, but we didn't ever talk. It was like living with a ghost, if that makes any sense. Like, I would go downstairs and I would eat breakfast or whatever, and then I would go back upstairs in my room, and then my grandparents would come out and they would do their stuff. If I saw them in passing, I would pretend like I didn't see them. A really, really unhealthy way to live. At this point in my life, I also got into my first relationship. I did date somebody at the beginning of middle school, but it lasted a week. I broke up with him right whenever I found out my parents were getting divorced. I remember he was crying in front of everyone. We were at school, and I was like, sorry if you're watching this, boy that I broke up with. I was going through way too much. Also, I didn't really know anything about you. For some reason, even though I was dating you, I didn't really know anything about you, so I don't know. I'm sorry. I ended up dating this other guy. He really helped me get through a lot of the whole divorce type of stuff, and he helped talk to me about it, and he helped work through it. And while I was crying, I would text him, and he made me feel a lot better, and he was one of the people that I kind of turned to for support. Then in March, one day, my grandparents randomly, we had kind of figured this was going to happen, but they just randomly packed all their stuff and they moved away. And I was like confused because my grandparents were like packing up all their stuff and they just left. I didn't say goodbye to my uncle or my grandma. My grandpa tried to talk to me, but I don't even remember what I said to him, but it was something really nasty, something really mean. I don't regret it because the way he treated the people he loved was completely disrespectful and horrible. My mom has tried to contact them and write letters to them, but they haven't responded to any of them. The sad thing is I am probably not going to hear from my grandparents until somebody in the family dies, and they need something because they don't have anyone else to support them. It's just the three of them out there. A few weeks after this happened, my mom told me that we were moving to where I'm living now. And I completely lost it again. I had panic attacks all the time. I was crying. I didn't tell anyone for a few weeks because I thought that maybe I could get my mom to change her mind. It was just my mom and I living in this huge house with a dog and then my hamster and gerbil. It was just us. I have some really happy memories from this period, but I also have a lot of bad ones. I didn't want to leave behind my life in Texas. I didn't want to have to leave all of my friends. I didn't want to leave my so-called boyfriend because I really relied on him for, unfortunately, a lot of the happiness and self-worth that I had for myself. Instead of finding happiness within myself, I tried to find it in other people, and that included the guy that I liked. That's a really unhealthy thing to do, and you really should not do that. As you can imagine, like all 6th grade relationships, it did not last. He called me one day and told me that his parents were also getting divorced. And I was like, of all things that could have happened, of course his parents have to get divorced too. I was like, are you fucking kidding me right now? Our relationship only lasted a few more weeks. And I finally told him that I was moving, even though I had kept it a secret for quite a while. And then he broke up with me over text, and I had a complete panic attack, mental breakdown. I don't know what it was, but I just remember crying and screaming alone in my room. I was home alone, and I just remember feeling so horrible because this one person that I had relied on for everything, for friendship, for self-worth, for happiness, was just like leaving. And I didn't know how to cope with that. And ever since my dad left, my grandparents, my uncle left, this guy that I thought was gonna be around forever because I was naive and I was in 6th grade, they all left. And it kind of scarred me a lot. After that, I was like, fuck it, let's move. I'm ready to get out of here. I don't want to be here anymore. And we moved. That first summer was really difficult. It was my mom and I living in an apartment by ourselves and her boyfriend, and that's like a whole different story about her boyfriend who was so awesome, and now he's my stepdad, spoiler alert. But my mom and my stepdad were friends for like 10 years before they got married, and like my stepdad had like a crush on my mom for a while, and then he got out of the friend zone, and I'm just like, yes, bitch. That's like a perfect example of how to get out of the friend zone. Like, honestly, I want to make a video just talking about how my stepdad got out of the friend zone. Like, it's absolute goals. Like, I dare you to look me in the eye and tell me that your goal isn't to marry somebody who is like your best friend that you have such a connection with. I dare you. Then 7th grade happened, and I think this is kind of the end of this chapter of my life, because after that, that's kind of like other stuff that I don't even know how much of that I want to share because it got weird. That's the time my parents got divorced. What I want to say to any of you who are watching, I hope you got something out of this video, whether it was that if you're going through a really shitty time right now, like your parents getting divorced or whatever it may be, it's going to be okay. It's gonna take years for you to feel better, but eventually you'll be able to look back and be like, that wasn't too bad, I guess. I really hope this helps somebody. My god, I just completely told my entire life story to people on the internet.